We've got an earlier episode of Carving Up Live on tap for you guys tonight. We got NBA trade deadline stuff. We've got Super Bowl stuff. And Bob Kraft not getting the Hall of Fame, which is an absolute travesty. Get to that later on the show and Carving Up the Context. Also going to discuss Anthony Davis traded to the Washington Wizards. What a steal of a deal by the Dallas Mavericks. Get to that. James Harden traded to the Cavs. Oh, I can't wait to get into that to start the show. Bryson's best 10, my top 10 players in Super Bowl 60 coming up in just 4 days. Get to that obviously later on the show. Jaren Jackson Jr. traded to the Jazz. I don't get this trade whatsoever for Utah. As for Memphis, I think it's a steal. Get to all that. Carving it up on a Wednesday, an earlier Wednesday, is absolutely loaded. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on Facebook, Twitch, X, and on Instagram. I am Bryson Carver. It is fantastic to be with you again a little bit earlier than usual. You know, normally if I have to do a pre-recorded show or an earlier show than I would before 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, normally I just pre-record it, set it to air at 6. But because of all the news that has been breaking constantly in the National Basketball Association, and it's, of course, Super Bowl week, I'm like, you know what? I don't want this thing to air at 6. And there's a massive trade that goes down, maybe for one Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe not. We still got about 24 hours for the deadline in the NBA. Get to that. Very, very excited. Kind of an update on the Giannis situation for Brian Windhorst. Get to that. Anthony Davis traded to the Washington Wizards. That broke a little over an hour ago. Again, as you heard in the open, steal for the Dallas Mavericks. As for Washington, I mean, they're trying to be relevant. I can't hate on it that much. Get to that. Bob Kraft misses out in the Hall of Fame, which I think, you know, I caught some crap last week for not being more outraged about Belichick not getting in the first ballot. I think the Kraft thing is outlandish for this man to not be enshrined in Canton, Ohio. Get to that later in the show. Top 10 players in the Super Bowl, and then the Jaren Jackson trade at the end of today's show. But first, oh man, it is the gift that keeps on giving the sports world. And I'll let Braun bring me into the segment.
Cleveland, this is for you. Oh.
So just when it looks like the Cavs are making a move or two that, hey, kind of makes sense, right? I think right now they're the 5 seed in the East. They were the number 1 seed last year. Right now, the Eastern Conference feels like a 2-horse race between the Pistons and the Knicks. We'll see what moves those teams decide to make. Can Cleveland get into that mix? Boston, it does look like Tatum will come back, even with the addition of Vucevic. Doubt Boston is a player beyond the second round in the East. But the question for the Cavs, can they put themselves in position to compete to get their first Eastern Conference Finals this century without one LeBron James, who you just heard in that clip? Well, they make a move for Keon Ellis, trade Hunter for Keon Ellis, which is like, okay, excellent defender, can fit what Cleveland does, can take the best guard on any opposing team. They could guard Jalen Brunson, for example, who the Cavs have had trouble with in the past. And then last night, they undo all of it by trading for James Harden. Now, again, we can show you the James Harden trade, straight up what it looks like if we have that. Here you go, the James Harden trade. Cavs get James Harden. The Clippers get Darius Garland, who we had heard reports that Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, there was a little bit of fissure there. Darius Garland, frankly, hasn't been terribly healthy. He's a bad defender. Guys like that aren't necessarily, their trade value is kind of plummeting, as we've seen with guys like Trae Young in the past and John Morant. And of course, again, they get a future second-round pick. Whoop-de-doo. No one really cares about that. So I'm not against the Cavs trading Darius Garland. Doesn't necessarily fit into a team that is hoping to try and make a run in a very weak Eastern Conference. Doesn't work with Donovan Mitchell. He's a guy who kind of has to have the ball in his hands. We know Donovan Mitchell is a ball-centric guard. Can be at times a bit turnover-prone, injury-prone. Is a guy who doesn't, play defense. If you watch the Pacers series last year, like Indiana with Halliburton was just going at him whenever he was on the floor during that series. I don't blame the move on for Darius Garland. But for James Harden, for a guy who is quite simply the most notorious choke artist in the history of the NBA playoffs, a guy who's 36 years old, we don't necessarily have to relitigate playoffs by playoffs, all the big game 5, 6, and 7s that he's been bad in, that he's turned the basketball over in, or the fact that he's quit on now 4 consecutive teams in a row with the Houston Rockets, with the Brooklyn Nets, with the Sixers, and then with the Clippers. I decided, let's just sum up James Harden's entire playoff resume in one graph. Because after you see this, anybody out there that's like, oh, maybe the Cavs got better. Maybe the Cavs could make a run in the Eastern Conference. Probably won't think that when I show y'all this. Here you go. James Harden has 26 games with more turnovers than made shots in the playoffs. He has 35 games with 3 or fewer made shots in the postseason. 55 games, folks, with 4 or fewer made shots. 44 games does James Harden have with as many turnovers as made shots. More elimination games, scoring under 20, 11, than over 30, 8. So 11 times he scored under 20 in the playoffs, 8 times he scored over 30. And this is the guy who's supposed to be one of the greatest scorers ever, right? 1-4 in his last 5 Game 7s, including a loss last year in which he went 2 for 8 against the Denver Nuggets. 10-15 in elimination games. I don't know, and I said it on a clip that I put on social media last night. I don't know what this man has on general managers around the NBA, whether it's Daryl Morey multiple times, whether it's now obviously with Kobe Altman and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't know what this guy's got on him. This man can choke in the playoffs, quit in your teams, sign extensions as a reward for some of those playoff disasters. And Ramona Shelburne, shout out to Ramona Shelburne, one of the best in the business. She came out and said Harden told her, hey, I didn't quit on the Clippers. Yeah, okay. The Clippers reportedly but through reports, you're reading that the Clippers were just blindsided by this, and you kind of understand why. I mean, they have won 17 of their last 21 games. They play good basketball as of late. Like, okay, maybe they're gelling a little bit. They can get in the play-in. Maybe they get as the 8th seed, and then who knows? Kawhi's having an unbelievable year. Knock on wood, he stays healthy. Doubt it. So and James Harden, even from a fit perspective, he's not a guy that plays off the ball. So you're going to pair him with a guy in Donovan Mitchell who's ball-centric. James Harden, also ball-centric. Where's Evan Mobley's touches going to come? How's he going to get involved in the picture offensively for the Cleveland Cavaliers? And folks that have said, and I mentioned this at the start of the segment, man, Darius Garland, terrible defender. Yeah, because James Harden's known for being Tony Allen or Gary Payton. I mean, what are we doing? A guy who routinely, year after year, I'm amazed that he declined. And by the way, Harden's having an excellent season. He is. All-star caliber numbers, potentially. But this is a guy who, in the playoffs, becomes more inefficient, is a worse decision maker, a worse defender, a worse teammate, and the moment's too big for him. Last year, Game 7 against the Nuggets, 2 for 8. Year before that, tied 2-2 series against the Mavs, awful shooting performances in Games 5 and 6. Year before that in Philadelphia, Sixers up 3-2. Harden scores in single digits in Game 7 in Boston. Year before that, straight up, I remember coming out my show the next day, 2022, and saying, I watched James Harden, watch his body language. That man quit on the Philadelphia 76ers against Miami 2022. Game 7 against the Milwaukee Bucks, his only playoff series, or I guess the second playoff series, as a Brooklyn Net. Awful. Kevin Durant goes for, 49? Goes nuclear in that Game 7. Harden disappears. Year before that bubble, under 50% shooting percentage in 2020 against the LA Lakers in that Game 4, down 2-1. 2-2 series with my Golden State Warriors 2019. The whole excuse, man, he just keeps running into the Warriors. Well, Kevin Durant got hurt in that Game 5. The game was close in the third quarter, and Harden disappeared. And then in Game 6, in the game, Steph scored 0 in the first half. Steph goes nuclear in the second half. Harden disappears in the fourth quarter. Multiple careless turnovers, giving the Warriors extra possessions, which Steph and Clay were able to take advantage of. 2018, who can forget, leading the Rockets to the worst shooting performance in the history of a Game 7. 27 consecutive missed three-pointers. 2017, what was he? I think 2 for 11. You're taking 11 shots in a home Game 6 against the Spurs without Tony Parker and Kawhi Leonard. Lose by 39 at home. 2015, you break the single game turnover record. Like this is who this guy is. And the Cavs have deluded themselves into this move, making them anything more than a second-round exit team, which they were going to be to begin with. I'm not against you moving Darius Garland. Honest to God, I'm not. But for, honestly, a less reliable version than Darius Garland, the least reliable superstar in the history of the NBA in the playoffs, that's who you just added. And so if you're Cleveland, again, it is the gift that keeps on giving. Show that graphic again, folks. Like this is what they just got. And a lot of these games came when Harden was an MVP candidate, when Harden was averaging 35 a game. I'll read this off again. 26 games with more turnovers than made shots. 35 games with three or fewer made shots. 55 basketball games in the postseason with 4 or fewer made shots for James Harden. 44 games with as many turnovers as made shots. More elimination games, scoring under 20 than over 30. 1-4 in his last 5 game sevens. 10-15 in his career in elimination games. I mean, what is this, year 7? He was in the same draft class as Steph. This is year 17. And he's looking for an extension. Now, maybe this is Cleveland's rationale is, you know what? We're not sure Donovan Mitchell is going to stay beyond this year. So obviously, we're not going to extend Harden. So we're going to move both. Okay. Good luck. What's Kate Cunningham going to do to you guys in the postseason? Going at James Harden and Detroit getting those matchups, those one-on-one matchups they want in the pick and roll. What the heck's Jalen Brunson going to do to James Harden? So this is one of the more unjust. I'm about to get to Anthony Davis in a few minutes. I see the argument for why Washington did it. I wouldn't have done, but I get it. There's no justifiable reason Cleveland made this move. None. But, as a lifelong, folks have called me a hater of Cleveland sports, and I would respond and say, no, I think I'm just a truth teller about this particular sports city. The fans are really delusional. Nice people. They really are nice people, but they're delusional. Guardians, they haven't won championships since like the 40s. The Browns, come on. And the Cavs, you needed, I don't know, the greatest basketball player of all time, pulling off the greatest comeback in basketball history to get you one championship. The gift that keeps on giving, Cleveland sports. You gotta love it.
Cleveland! This is for you! Oh!
Again, unjustifiable. I cannot believe they made this move. And we had seen reports about 24 hours prior to Kobe Altman pulling the trigger on this move that they had been discussing, hey, a Darius Garland for James Harden swap. I cannot believe they did this. Honest to God. Before we get to Anthony Davis, again, there are some trades that have happened in the last few minutes, it looks like. We've got from Shams Charania. We can pull this up. All right, from Shams Charania. This is about right as we were going live on air. He is reporting, if I can pull up Twitter, which has oddly been slower as late. I'm not sure what's going on. The Chicago Bulls are trading Kobe White and Mike Conley Jr. to the Charlotte Hornets for Colin Sexton, Ousmane Dieng, and 3 second-round picks. Sources tell ESPN. So, and I actually talked shout out to my guy John Rivera, the Fan Perspective. He's a big Bulls fan. We had talked about this yesterday that, the Bulls were trying to move Kobe White. They obviously moved Vucevic to the Boston Celtics for Anthony Simons. And so I'll tell you what, man, Charlotte's got some momentum. I mean, you see what Colin Knupple's doing right now, shooting the basketball the way he shot it. The Hornets look like they're going to make a push to get in the play-in tournament, which, hey, that's an accomplishment for them. I don't think they've been in the play-in tournament since 2022, I think, when they lost to Atlanta. So, young core they got there. Obviously, LaMelo Ball and those guys. I like it. I think it's a nice move. Kobe White's a good player. Really good player. Now, are they a little guard heavy? Potentially. Obviously, Mike Conley Jr., my guess is they probably buy out his contract and he joins a championship contender. That's, what the feeling around the NBA seems to be. But again, we've got, it's 3:16 Eastern Standard Time now. So we've got a day and 44 minutes before the NBA trade deadline hits. So there very well could be some deals live in the show. Again, this is why I didn't want to pre-record carving it up, because I'm like, I don't want to miss if anything breaks. I don't want to miss it. So there you go. We'll give an update on Giannis in about 10 minutes. But another all-star big got traded literally in the last couple hours or so. Anthony Davis moved from the Dallas Mavericks to the Washington Wizards. In fact, we can show you this trade if we have that. We got a lot of graphics to show. We got that graphic. Here we go. So the Washington Wizards get Anthony Davis, Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, Dante Exum. The Mavs get a big package. Chris Middleton, A.J. Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley the third, and they get 5 picks, 2 of them being first-rounders, 2026 and 2030, and then 3 second-rounders, 2026, 27, and 29. So real quick, again, look at the bottom right of the screen. You see 2026 first-round pick. Is that what's really important about that is that Washington actually didn't give up their own pick in that deal. I think I could be wrong. I think it's either Houston or OKC pick. Point is, it's going to be a lower first-round pick that Washington is giving up. So essentially what the Vegas odds makers are saying is, hey, Washington's dead last in the Eastern Conference. Washington, they're obviously not playing Trae Young. Even if Anthony Davis were healthy, they're not playing Anthony Davis because there's no point. You're well out of the much playoff, much less play-in chase. Sit those guys and tank for a high pick. You've got Alex Sarr. You got some young pieces that you potentially like. So you could get a lottery pick in this draft, which is projected to be maybe not quite as good as last year, somewhere in that same ballpark. Like Washington feels like they can build a nice core. So bring in all-star veterans, all-NBA veterans. He's past that point in his career, but Anthony Davis, Trae Young, and then try and build around the young core. So if you're Washington, look, you haven't been in the playoffs since, I think, 2018. Since 2021. That was the Westbrook-Bradley Beal season. They got gentlemen swept by the Sixers. Haven't sniffed the playoffs since. They've been one of the drubs of the NBA in the last half decade. So their mindset is, we like the young core we've got. Bring in Trae Young. Didn't have to give up, a king's ransom to get him. Bring in Anthony Davis, gave up multiple picks, but at the end of the day, one of those picks isn't even our own pick, and it won't be a good one anyway because it'll be, late first round, which we know by that point. This is a deep draft, but by and large, the best players are picked in the lottery. Like Nikola Jokic, guys like that, those are the outlier, not the rule. So for Washington, their push is to be relevant. Their mindset is the Eastern Conference has been weaker than the Western Conference for basically the entirety of the 21st century, by and large. We feel like we plug in some of these pieces, Anthony Davis, Trae Young, good pick and roll duo. We can be able to put ourselves in a position to get in the play-in and maybe be the 7 or 8 seed and then see what happens. Now, the question, of course, is that is Anthony Davis going to be healthy? Anthony Davis going into next year, that'll be end of 2027, so that'll be year 15 for Anthony Davis. Let's just say he doesn't exactly age like LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant because he doesn't take care of his body as well as those 3 do. That's why all 3 are still all-stars at this point in their career. So that's, at this point, it feels like kind of a damaged goods type of situation where, yeah, AD can still be productive. AD can still give you, 25 and 11 on his best night. But what was the nickname we gave him on the show a few years ago? Coin flip Davis. You don't know which guy you're going to get any given night. That's number one. Number two, you don't know if he's going to be healthy. Charles Barkley once called him street clothes. Harsh, but there's some truth to that. It's rarely available. And so, and also, what's the development of Alex Sarr going to look like now that you're bringing another big? Like and maybe he can be like a mentor for the young kid. Like, we'll see how that all plays itself out. For Dallas, I absolutely love this move. Love it because, listen, we all know Nico Harris screwed that franchise, and that goes without saying. That it's one of the worst trades in NBA history. I know Lakers fans are starting to sour on Luka, but they're getting a little bit tired of the things that Mavs fans got tired of at times. The atrocious defense, whining every single play with the officials. He's still giving you a near 30-point triple-double a night. He's still indisputably one of the 5 best players in basketball in his prime. Like, it could be worse. Dallas will take him back in a heartbeat. And Dallas loves Cooper Flagg, as they should. Cooper Flagg was by far the best player in last year's draft with respect to guys like Colin Knuppel. They're trying to build around him. And so multiple first-round picks moving forward. Again, the one they got from Washington for this year, again, is not going to be that great of a pick. Because, again, lower first-round pick, it's not going to come from a lottery team. Like, if it were Washington's pick, it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Mavs almost certainly won't be in the playoffs, barring something unforeseen. So they could have that lottery pick and Washington's. That's not the case. And so the final return, if you want to weigh it this way, I guess, is because I saw someone put this on social media, because obviously 4 years ago they had Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic that did the Dallas Mavericks. And it would appear that if we have this right here, potentially. Yeah, so the return for those guys are 3 first-round picks, Chris Middleton and Marvin Bagley. So, yeah. a contributor to a finals team from 5 years ago with the Milwaukee Bucks. Respect to Chris Middleton. But we know injuries kind of sapped whatever he had left in his career. And Marvin Bagley III, who was the ultimate bust, who was infamously taken before Luka Doncic and Trae Young, among others, Mikal Bridges. So, safe to say, again, people that are trying to reverse engineer history or kind of doing a revisionist history thing, like, well, Nico Harrison, you see what Luka's doing in LA now. Man, this is not a championship team in Los Angeles. LeBron's going to end up moving on. It's going to free some cap space. They're going to build around Luka and Austin Reeves. They need to get some defenders and some shooters around those guys. Like, again, I'll get to this in 5 or 6 minutes. Draymond Green, my guy. I love me some Draymond Green. But he might be on the board either this year or next year for the Lakers, potentially. Although some of that might depend on if LeBron's still there. But again, we'll get to that. It's not a championship contending season for LA. As deep as the West is, as good as OKC, the San Antonio Spurs, the Denver Nuggets, who to me are the clear top 3 favorites in the West. I don't really buy Houston because I didn't buy them after Van Vliet went down. Now that they lost Steven Adams, I really don't buy them. If they acquire Giannis, different story, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Minnesota, I don't trust, unless they make a Giannis move themselves. So all that to say, the dust has kind of settled to a degree. I mean, we got to see who the Mavs pick with the picks they got from Washington, from the Lakers. But the dust has kind of settled on the Luka trade, and it's been almost a year to the day since Dallas and LA made that move, and it looks as bad today as it did in 2025. I know the Nico Harrison defenders out there don't want to hear that, but that's the case. But Dallas has assets they can build around Cooper Flagg. We'll see how it plays out. The kid looks absolutely phenomenal. We're going to take a quick break in the show, 1-minute break, but when we come back, an update on Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a carving up the context why Bob Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots, why him not getting the Hall of Fame is nothing short of an absolute travesty. Get to that. Bryson's best 10, top 10 players going into Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. All that, the Jaren Jackson reaction. And again, we're a day basically, 24 hours basically from the NBA trade deadline tomorrow. There's potentially some more moves that could happen during the show, potentially. So stay tuned for all that on Carving Up Live. We're not going anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on an earlier episode of the show. Again, normally if I had some things to do during the time that we would normally go live and be like, okay, I'm just going to pre-record. But the fact that we are 24 hours out from the NBA trade deadline, I'm not going to miss it if anything breaks. And then at 6 o'clock, like, why is Bryson not talking about this? So yeah, obviously we'll be back on air on Friday at the normally scheduled time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. But appreciate everybody on the West Coast, early afternoon, and then East Coast. You're probably not, if you're working right now, got not much time left, if I can speak English today, to work the rest of the day. So happy hump day, as that Camel in the Geico commercial used to say. Before we get to our next segment, I do want to issue a reminder. Shout out to everybody who's been able to be a part of buying Carving It Up merchandise. Hit the link. Scan that QR code at the top left of your screen. It'll take you to the website where you can get some Carving Up merch. We got hoodies, we got t-shirts, hats, pants, shorts, bags, stuffed bear. I mean, anything you can possibly think of. Water bottles, coffee mugs. My parents actually got a Carving Up coffee mug, which I really appreciated. All of those things. Scan that QR code right there. It'll take you to the website. You can also check out our other merchandise from the Grid Network, from shows like the All Even Podcast, Boston Sports Summit. I know Tim's excited to go on air tonight. Big Patriots fan. Check out his show. I think he goes on air at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. Check his show out. We got a brand new show, brand new basketball show on the Grid. Check it out. unbelievable shows on this network. Be sure to buy all the merchandise. Saturday Morning Tailgate. We just concluded season 1, last week or a couple weeks ago, but we'll be back this fall. In the meantime, in the off season, get our Saturday Morning Tailgate merch so you could be ready for season 2. We'll probably kick that off sometime in August. So very, very excited about that. And then if you just want like Grid Network stuff, like that just says The Grid, we got that stuff too. Hats, t-shirts, hoodies, the whole thing. Also, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. Subscribe to my channel, Carving It Up with Bryson Carver. Subscribe to the Grid Network, GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network. And then you see all of my social media platforms down there. You got Instagram, you got X, you got TikTok. I'm also streaming the show on Twitch, which I've done for the last few months. So be sure to check all of those things out. And I will be checking my phone again throughout the show. I try to refrain from that by and large, in case my phone starts going crazy because there's some breaking news, because I want to stay on top of the NBA trade news. Jared McCain was dealt to the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is a sneaky, really, really good pick. Philadelphia gets a first rounder in return for that. Okay, we'll see what they do with that. But the trade that everybody is waiting to see if it happens over the course of the next 24 hours is, of course, Giannis, who I've stated for probably 2 to 3 years on the show, I believe is the second best player in basketball to Nikola Jokic. Quite simply, he's a guy who averages 30 points a game on 60% shooting, double-double machine, could give you 5 or 6 assists a game, and is still one of the top defensive players in all of basketball. He's become more injury-prone as of late. This is year 13 for Giannis, so that is going to come with greater regularity, but at the end of the day, he's still an awesome player in his prime, and teams would be lucky to have him. So we have an update from Brian Windhorst this morning on First Take, who detailed kind of the latest what's going on with Milwaukee's discussions with teams like the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Miami Heat. Here's what Wendy had to say this morning on First Take.
We all know about how negotiations go. I suspect weeks ago that the Bucks knew that this was going to come down probably to deadline the last 24 hours. So we still are about to go into that. The Warriors have put everything they can on the table. I am hearing, I would never say that I know everything that's going on. There are lots of conversations I'm not aware of, but I am not aware of the Knicks doing stuff to improve their offer, and they don't have the offer that Milwaukee's going to take. So in my view, unless you have a mystery team, this is a 3-horse race for Giannis, but the choice is really down to the Bucks, and really I think the choice is down to Bucks ownership, because I know that Giannis is ready to move. Giannis is ready to move. These other teams are ready to move. There's ancillary pieces that our teams are ready to move. Is Bucks ownership in the next 24 hours going to say, okay, let's move on from him now? If that answer ends up being yes, you see this. And I think it's going to be interesting also. Draymond Green came out last night and basically said the Warriors have told him he's going if they get a deal with Giannis done, and he's preparing himself for it.
And we'll play that Draymond soundbite in just a second. But basically what Wendy's saying is Milwaukee's trying to get this done. Giannis wants an opportunity to compete for a title. There was a piece written recently where Giannis was saying, hey, I'd like to, I forgot who the journalist is who wrote that. I apologize. I want to give credit where it's due. But basically Giannis, like at the end of the day, in my bones, I'm paraphrasing, I want to be a Milwaukee Buck long-term. And again, there's a reason it's taken this long just for us to get to this point. There's a reason that despite the fact that Giannis has not been out of the first round since 2022, he's not been in the Eastern Conference Finals or Finals for that matter since 2021, that he's taken this long. He's loyal to Milwaukee. It's been well documented. His emotional ties to that city, given his background, comes to Milwaukee. The fans embraced him right off the bat. He feels loyal to that city. Won him a championship, won MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year, all of it. There's a reason it's taken this long. But Giannis is a great player. Giannis is an all-time. If he retires tomorrow, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he wants to be able to put himself in position to compete for championships. And the Bucks have not been able to do that for the last 4 years. So, all of that being said, Miami, it's pretty well documented. Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, multiple first-round picks. For the Warriors, let me get to the Warriors in just a moment. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, the reporting is now stating that Jaden McDaniel is probably going to be a guy that gets dealt potentially for one Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Timberwolves are in a rough spot because they don't have, their own picks. They'd have to get other teams involved. The Warriors are the interesting player in this because reportedly, according to, I think it was Sam Amick, Giannis doesn't view Golden State as attractive of a destination now as he did maybe a couple of years ago. Because Steph Curry is about to be 38 years old next month. Still great, but Father Time's undefeated. Steph's going to decline eventually. The roster without Steph, does he necessarily want to carry that long term? Of course, a part of that deal would involve Draymond Green, who, after the Warriors lost to the Sixers last night without Steph and Jimmy, Draymond talked to the media in what very well might have been his final game as a Golden State Warrior, which is hard to believe that I'm saying those words. This is what Draymond said after the game last night.
What do I have to sit and worry about? What do I have to, be upset about? I've been here for 13 and a half years. That's longer than probably 98% of NBA players have been in one place. And this guy from Saginaw has been in a place for 13 and a half years. I don't know that it ends at 13 and a half, but if it does, what a run it's been. I'll take the fine for it. What a run it's been.
And he went on to say, I watched the whole presser, and it was really kind of, I think, surreal for Draymond, because he talked about he'd had a conversation with Steve Kerr that day, and he mentioned something where Kerr was talking to him about, have you heard the trade rumors and all that? And Draymond's like, yeah, you hear that stuff. It's trade deadline season. That's part of the business of the league. And he said the next question Kerr asked him is, how is Hazel taking it? Hazel is Draymond's wife. And he said when Kerr asked him that question, it's like, oh, this might actually happen. This is the closest I've ever been in my 13 and a half years in the NBA with the Golden State Warriors to actually getting dealt, to where I will not finish the season as a Warrior. Now, it's being reported, and I find this really, really fascinating, because I'm not sure that this would happen, in a trade scenario. Reportedly, Draymond Green, according to Wendy, we know Brian Windhorst is a trustable source, Draymond Green and the Los Angeles Lakers have mutual interest. So this is from Wendy. This is his quote. If he were traded, his plan would not be to remain in Milwaukee. He would want to be moved on. So that's saying because the Bucks, it's also being reported that the Bucks might want another team involved in the deal for Draymond Green to be able to, be moved there, in large part because it's like, we feel like we'll just take the picks. We could have some mutual beneficial aspect to it if Draymond's moved to another team for salary reasons. I don't think, and Wendy seems to be alluding to it here, I just don't think the Lakers would facilitate a trade, even if it were to acquire Draymond Green, if it means part of that trade is Giannis going to the Warriors. They're just not going to do that. And so is this a situation where, because my thought was, because the reports had been Draymond Green, if he's traded to Milwaukee, he'll sit out the rest of the season. He's obviously not going to play for Milwaukee. They're out of the playoff mix with Giannis. With Draymond Green, they're obviously dead. And then maybe join the Warriors in a reduced deal next year. But if LeBron wants to stay in LA, we know Draymond's close to LeBron James, Clutch Sports, all that. They've been tight for about a decade. That's something he might very well consider. And so that's really the latest we have on Giannis. If I'll be honest, it's the last show I'm doing prior to the deadline. Obviously, we'll be back Friday, and we'll know if Giannis was moved or not moved. We know Giannis is going to get moved in the next 4 months, or 5 months maybe. It's just whether it's going to happen in the next 24 hours or this summer. My gut tells me he does not get moved at all. I think Milwaukee wants to be diligent about this. I think Milwaukee wants to look at all the prospects. They understand that, listen, right now the Warriors had the best deal, but they won't in the summer. There'll be other teams pursuing Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Minnesota Timberwolves, who is Giannis' preferred destination, in large part because A, gets to pair up with Anthony Edwards, B, goes to a championship contender, and C, he goes to a championship contender that hasn't gotten over the hump yet. Whereas the Warriors, they've won before. The Heat have a championship culture. Timberwolves never won in their history. Never been to a finals in their history, even with Kevin Garnett and now with Anthony Edwards. So my guess is they wait till the summer. Obviously, I'm hoping against hope. Joe Lacob, and in particular Mike Dunleavy Jr., makes magic happen. Is able to put Steph in position to where he can contend for a championship this year and next year. Next year in particular, especially with Jimmy Butler coming back from injury, because the Warriors aren't going to trade Jimmy, according to to Anthony Slater and others. I think he doesn't get dealt. If that's the case, he probably sits the rest of the year. Milwaukee wants to tank for a high pick, and they'll go from there. Got some comments on YouTube by Barry Grant Jr. I'll even podcast. Check his show out. AD got sent to basketball purgatory. That's the thing. And again, like I said with the Harden trade earlier in the show, there's no justifiable way you can rationalize that move for the Cavs moving for James Harden, because there's a very hard cap on how far they can go because of how bad Harden is in the playoffs. AD, it's like, man, Washington's been the drugs, and it's why they are basketball purgatory. They've been the drugs for the last 5 years. They haven't even been remotely close to playoff contention. Hey, we've got a young core we like. We've already made the move for Trae Young, bringing in Anthony Davis. The pick we traded for this year, the first-round pick we traded for this year, isn't our own pick, so we could get another lottery player in this upcoming draft, which is really, really good. But they have a 7-seed ceiling next year, if we're being honest. He says, Barry says, Draymond is preparing to take his mission to Mars. Listen, not only is the discussion about whether that was Draymond's last game as a Warrior, which again, if I don't think Giannis is getting dealt, then I think Draymond's going to finish this year as a Warrior. But if not, the question is Draymond going to play another basketball game this year? Because if the Bucks buy him out, will the Lakers want him? Now, I think they should. As bad as that team, or as limited as I should say, as that team is defensively, LeBron's not a good defender of this stage of career. We know what Luka is in that end of the floor. DeAndre Ayton isn't a good, rim protector by any means whatsoever. JJ Redick can coach defense, but he doesn't have the personnel. Draymond Green, as limited as he is offensively and as much as his turnovers this season has driven me up a wall, he can still defend at a high level. Not as high of a level as he used to, not defensive player of the year level, but he can still defend at a high level. And then Barry says, and he's talked about this on his show, this Giannis thing is very similar to the Dwight Howard saga. It's super annoying. And listen, I won't speak for Barry, but he sort of made the point that, okay, you make the move for Damian Lillard, and then you fire Adrian Griffin, and then you obviously bring in Doc Rivers, and they've tried to make some moves here and there, some ancillary pieces, brought in Kyle Kuzma last year, brought in Miles Turner this year to try and appease Giannis. It hasn't worked. My reaction to that is, if you're in a market like Milwaukee and you have a future first ballot Hall of Famer like Giannis, you have an obligation to him to take big swings at his behest. I mean, is that not literally what we criticized the Cavs for years with LeBron James, particularly in his first stint there? Like, crap, you can't do any better than Mo Williams and Zydrunas Ilgauskas? Like, can't go out and swing for Carmelo Anthony or somebody, or Chris Bosh? Like, can you get him somebody? That was the argument for years for LeBron. So the case with Giannis in a small market, smaller than Cleveland, I think that's a fair point to make in terms of defending him. Let's shift to the NFL. Again, we have all this NBA trade deadline stuff, and then you sometimes forget, oh yeah, the Super Bowl is being played in 96 hours from now. So there's some news we got this week, yesterday in particular, regarding the Patriots. It has nothing to do with their upcoming matchup with Seattle on Sunday. It has everything to do with the fact that their owner, Robert Kraft, is not getting the Hall of Fame. So this is the segment we do every Wednesday in the show, carving up the context. Essentially, I take a story and try and go a little bit deeper and look into the minutia of why something is the way it is. I'm not a journalist. I'm just a sports prognosticator. What do I know, right? It's carving up the context. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I gotta admit, because this is back-to-back weeks we've done a Carving Up the Context segment about a New England Patriots legend not making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Last year we did Belichick, last week we did Belichick. I'll say now what I said then. I would have voted for Bill. I would have. But, excuse me, we're talking about a guy who lost more games than he won without Brady. We have a large sample size of that. Almost basically a decade without Tom. Lost more games than he won. Number one. Number two, was embroiled in one of the biggest cheating scandals in league history. If he's got to wait a year, I'm not losing sleep for a guy who treated a lot of people in that franchise and outside of it pretty terribly, including Tom at the end. I'd have voted him in. I think the reasons that Bill Pulley and others orchestrated him not getting in were pretty ridiculous. That said, I really don't have much sympathy for him. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm not saying I even have a crazy amount of sympathy for Bob Kraft, because I generally Call me whatever you want to call me. I'm not somebody who's gets up in arms about, billionaires' issues. But Robert Kraft not getting in the Hall of Fame is an absolute travesty in every sense of the word. So, and I sort of touched on this last week in the Belichick segment, but all three of the main players of that 20-year run, Brady the quarterback, Belichick the coach, Kraft the owner, we have data on all three of them without the other two. All three of them. Let's show Tom Brady without Belichick. That we know what that is. It's 3 years, won 64% of his games, 2 division titles, went to a conference title game, went to a Super Bowl, and won that Super Bowl. I mean, we knew 9 months after Tom and Bill split up, Tom won that divorce. We have Belichick without Brady in that stretch. 91 and 95, 2000, and then 2020 through 2023. So virtually a decade. Actually, it is exactly a decade. He won 42% of his games, no division titles, no conference championship games, no Super Bowls, and no Super Bowl wins. But what's Bob Kraft done without Bill? Well, let's take you back for a second, mid-90s. The New England Patriots, the previous 5 years to Robert Kraft purchasing the team, had the worst winning percentage of any franchise in the NFL. The worst. It was so bad. They were in a dump of a stadium. Foxborough Stadium is a disaster. That they're going to move to St. Louis. They were going to be the St. Louis Patriots. That doesn't sound right. Robert Kraft, longtime fan of the Patriots, buys the team. The rest is history of the last 3 decades, as we've seen. Show Bob Kraft's history without Bill because not bad. Between 94 and 99, and in the last 2 years. 60% winning percentage, 3 division titles, 2 conference title games, 2 Super Bowl appearances, no Super Bowl wins, but that could change on Sunday. So Tom won a Super Bowl without Bill. Kraft's been to 2 Super Bowls without Bill, might win one on Sunday. And when you consider the list, I went on Fox Sports, and because they recently, put up an article yesterday about the owners that have a bust in Canton, Ohio. They are the following: Burt Bell, Charles Bidwell, Pat Bowlen, Paul Brown, Al Davis, Eddie DeBartolo Jr., George Hallis, Lamar Hunt, Jerry Jones, Tim Mara, Wellington Mara, George Preston Marshall, Dan Reeves, Dan Rooney, Tex Schramm, and Ralph Wilson. A lot of those names we know. We obviously know Al Davis, Jerry Jones, DeBartolo, the Mara family, Dan Rooney. Like, they're legends all in their own rights. Some of those, like George Hallis, for example, like some of those did not do business during the Super Bowl era, by and large. The guy who literally has the most Super Bowls as an owner, by the way, with an additional 5 Super Bowl appearances, 5 Super Bowl appearances beyond those 6 wins. So the man has took over a Patriots franchise that had been to 1 Super Bowl in just under 30 years. And in the 30 years since, they've been to 11. What are we talking about? The guy who's successful without Belichick. The guy who's been successful even without the greatest quarterback ever, Tom Brady. Went to a Super Bowl in 1996, I think it was, with Bill Parcells and that Patriots team that lost to Brett Favre and the Packers in the Super Bowl. Got Bill, got Brady, won 6. Brady gets kicked out the back door by Bill. Bill runs the franchise into the dirt for 4 years. Kraft, misses on the draw Mayo hire, brings in Mike Vrabel, bam, right back in the Super Bowl. Safe to say this man maybe has an eye for talent in terms of bringing certain individuals in to the franchise. And for those that say, well, come on, like let's keep the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's kind of keep that to players and coaches. Because that's we don't, except for Jerry Jones, more on him just a second, we don't see the owners, by and large. Maybe they show like one shot in the booth, like after the team's clinched the conference championship game. We see the coach on the sideline with the headset on, and we see the players in the field, obviously. But if you want to know how much ownership matters, look at teams like the Cleveland Browns and New York Jets. I've said this for about 2 weeks on my show, and it's probably going to become a motto moving forward. Maybe we'll sell Carving It Up merch that says this. We'll shorten the phrase. But if you're a talented individual and your first stop is with the New York Jets or the Cleveland Browns and you fail, blame the Browns or the Jets. It is their fault. Like that's what it is. If you go on to somewhere else and fail again, okay, you probably had something to do with it too. That's why I'm willing to give Robert Saleh a second chance at Tennessee. It's like, okay, let's see what he does there. Now, Tennessee doesn't have the best ownership, but it's not Woody Johnson, for crying out loud, who's probably the worst owner in football. Haslam family in Cleveland, not much better. By the way, Jerry Jones, who's in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, I don't have a problem with it in the sense that, okay, got 3 Super Bowls, was, along with Jimmy Johnson, the architect of a dynasty in the 90s, broke up that dynasty, but still was a big part of that. And in the 30 years since, has been absolutely instrumental for the NFL from a marketing standpoint. I've said this. Jerry Jones is far, it's not even close, is far and away the best marketer in the NFL. It's not even a contest. You see the ratings the Cowboys get each and every year. You see the practice facility, the Star, the stadium, Jerry World, AT&T Stadium. It's like a freaking palace. Pete Carroll years ago said it was like a nightclub that has football games. It's unbelievable. You see what he's done with with being able to get not 1 but 2 teams to play in Los Angeles. Jerry Jones was the primary catalyst to putting the NFL back in LA. And by the way, next year they're going to host their 2nd Super Bowl in the last 6 or 7 years. Jerry's been great for the league from a business perspective. But when the Cowboys haven't gone to an NFC Championship game, and I know Cowboys fans are tired of hearing it, I get it, in 30 years, and you're the only common denominator, that's why when people get on Dak or Romo or Mike McCarthy or Garrett, not saying those guys aren't at fault at all, but Jerry was failing to get to conference championship games before they even got there. Like, that's the reality. All of the Patriots' success, with the exception of 1985 when they got boat raced by the 85 Bears, what was it, 55-10 or something crazy? With the exception of that, the Patriots have been a trash franchise for the entire Super Bowl era until Bob Kraft got there. And then immediately, within a couple of years, they're in a Super Bowl. 5 years later, in another Super Bowl against the Rams, dynasty starts from there. They go to 8 more beyond that. And then 2 years after Belichick's finally fired, you're right back in another Super Bowl. So I think Bob Kraft, Jonathan Kraft as well, I think the Kraft family kind of knows what they're doing. And it's nothing against the George Hallases, the Dan Rooneys, the Jerry Jones of the world, the Eddie DeBartol's, the Al Davis of the world. All of them deserving to have busts in Canton, Ohio. No question. You're telling me the guy with literally the most Lombardi trophies of any owner shouldn't get in? Now, if they're giving Kraft the same punishment they are Belichick with the Spygate thing, God knows I wouldn't have done it. Lord knows Kraft would have gotten my vote. But I kind of get it. I do. I'm sorry, I do. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it. It's justifiable. They did something blatantly against the rules. They were told to stop, didn't stop. Now, again, my argument would be that's much more Bill than it was Kraft. You could say Kraft allowed it to happen. Listen, Nixon didn't commit the crimes related to Watergate. He just, he aided and abetted. He hid the individuals and hid the information regarding Watergate. That's why he had to resign. Like, it's not always the people who does Charles Manson didn't kill anybody. Now we're getting dark kind of, but he was the mastermind behind it. If you want to make that same argument for Bob Kraft with Spygate, okay, be my guest. I don't really buy it, but be my guest. And so it is, I kind of scoffed at the idea. Of like, okay, if Belichick doesn't get in, people are like, well, will Brady get? Like, Brady's going to be first ballot. Now there's a part of me that's kind of questioning, man, if Belichick didn't get in first ballot, which, by the way, Bill Walsh didn't get in first ballot. It's not unprecedented. And Kraft didn't get in first opportunity. Are they going to hold Tom responsible for Deflategate? I really hope they don't, because there's overwhelming evidence that was the biggest sham scandal in the history of the NFL. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I don't get it, man. I unless the only justifiable reason would be they're going to hold Kraft responsible for Spygate too. Okay. I wouldn't have done it, but okay. We just had a trade break in the NBA. We just had a trade break about 7 minutes ago. This is from Shams Charania. Here we go. The Los Angeles Clippers, Brooklyn Nets, and Toronto Raptors have agreed on a multi-team trade sending Chris Paul to the Raptors and Ochai Agbaji, a 2032 Raptors second rounder, and cash to the Brooklyn Nets. So Chris Paul's going to Toronto. Now, is he going to stay there? I mean, Toronto's a good team. Like, Toronto's going to make the playoffs. The whole idea for Chris going to the Clippers to begin with was, hey, we feel like we can contend for a championship. Obviously, that was never going to be the case. But also, I'm the greatest Clipper of all time. Family's been living in Los Angeles for the last, 8 years since I got traded to Houston in the offseason of 2017. Finished my time there. That's why I thought the Clippers did him unbelievably dirty and painting him out as to be some scapegoat. So I wonder if Toronto buys him out. Or if they say, you know what, he can be a mentor for some young guys. Look what he did for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City. That one season he had in OKC, 2019-2020. Only time will tell. I'm trying to find if there's any reports about if CP3 is going to be, okay, here you go. Shams just reported. Here you go. That just answered my question. It's from Shams. The Raptors will not require Chris Paul to report to the team and could still discuss trades involving him over the next day. Toronto is now out of the tax. Brooklyn picks up an asset and cash to cover Agbaji's salary. The Clippers clear a roster spot and save $7 million in tax. So this is a financial decision as much as it was. We eventually need to move on from Chris Paul. So Chris Paul could get traded again over the next 24 hours. If he doesn't, I imagine he'll get bought out. That's my guess, but only time will tell. So here you go. I'm scanning my phone. Doesn't look like we've got anything. We'll see if Ja gets traded. I doubt it. There's some Ja Morant rumors going out there. I don't think that's the case. Okay, let's shift to, we're staying in football, talking about Super Bowl 60. I do this every year at this time. Sorry, I'm checking my phone again. We got anything else? Oh, okay. Real quick, we got an update on the Chris Paul thing. Chris Haynes is reporting that the Raptors are expected to waive Chris Paul. So that's not at all surprising. Because I really don't know what they were expecting to get for Chris. But the Clippers moved him not just to be able to clear that situation, which I think they brought upon themselves, but also to clear $7 million out the books, and they're not out of the tax. And so my guess is I'm curious the teams that'll be interested in Chris Paul. I think the Lakers are a team that could potentially bring him in. He was obviously with the Spurs last year, and I think was good for that locker room. Did they bring him back as like a vet mentor, as like an Andre Iguodala, Udonis Haslem type role? Maybe. Listen, I'm always going to pull for the Warriors to win a title. If Chris Paul gets championship going out, I would be absolutely thrilled for the guy. Absolutely thrilled. Okay, so that doesn't look like we have anything else. So we can go ahead and move on to Bryson's best 10. So I always do a top 10 list of players in the Super Bowl each and every year. And this year's, of course, going to be no different. So let's go and get the background music going. All right, we will start. And this list may surprise you with how many guys from what team are on there. We'll start number 10. The 10th best player in Super Bowl 60 is DeMarcus Lawrence, edge rusher for the Seattle Seahawks. D-Law is the 10th best player in Super Bowl 60. Here's why. So listen, this is a Seahawks team that has led the playoffs in sacks. He's been an instrumental part of that, registering a few sacks in this postseason. You talk about the fact that, listen, this is a guy who spent the first 11 years of his career in Dallas, having Pro Bowl caliber seasons, getting a couple big contracts, and the Cowboys being the Cowboys, he's like, I'm never going to win here. And he literally said that verbatim. I love Dallas. I'm never going to win here. I can win in Seattle because this is a football first franchise. And what do you know? He's a win away from his first ring. So listen, this is a guy who obviously we know we'll get to another Seahawks defensive lineman later who kind of draws a lot of attention. That DeMarcus Lawrence versus Will Campbell matchup is going to be really, really important. Will Campbell's given up the most sacks in the postseason. Some of that's because he's played 3 games to this point, but also he's a rookie. He's had some struggles. Play well against Benito last week in Denver. Again, some of that is the Patriots relied on the run game in the driving snowstorm. Not been the case in Santa Clara. We'll see how the DeMarcus Lawrence versus Will Campbell matchup shakes out. I think it's going to be one of the key matchups that decides the Super Bowl on Sunday. DeMarcus Lawrence is the 10th best player in Super Bowl 60. One of his defensive teammates and one of my favorite players at a last year draft, one of my favorite players in the NFL this season among rookies, it is Nick Emanwori, safety, really kind of do-it-all type of guy for the Seattle Seahawks defense. Nick Emanwori, is the 9th best player in Super Bowl 60, and here's why. So again, you kind of heard me allude to it, but this is a guy who will take snaps at linebacker. This is a guy who will come in on blitzes to come after the quarterback, to come after Drake May on Sunday. This is a guy who can play coverage. Like, the Seahawks defense, I've compared it all season long. It reminds me of the Legion of Boom. Reminds me of Legion of Boom. And Seahawks fans have constantly corrected me, like, no, this is they call it the dark side defense, which I kind of like. Nick Emmanwori is one of the major contributors to it being that. You talk about a guy who was drafted out of South Carolina. He was, to me, and I think it's being validated today, not even close to the best safety in last year's draft. He's validated with that, with Seattle. Miami Down likes to use him all different types of places. I'm really curious to see how Josh McDaniels tries to neutralize him, tries to be able to make Drake May's life a little bit easier with helping him either, whether he's not trying to keep Drake May away from being rushed by Emmanwori, whether he's going to play coverage against Diggs, Booty, and others. So this is one of the impact players of the game. If you look at Super Bowl 60 and the Seahawks win this thing, you'll look up and say Nick Emmanwori probably had a big night. He is the 9th best player in Super Bowl 60, one of the X factors in this game. At number 8, we've got our first Patriot on the list. It is Stephon Diggs, wide receiver for the Patriots. He is the 8th best player in Super Bowl 60, and here is why. So listen, I liked this. A lot of Pats fans were a little skeptical. Some Pats fans I talked to during last year's offseason, like, okay, like Stephon Diggs is obviously an upgrade over anybody we have because the Patriots prior to 2025 had one of the worst receiving corps in all of football. You bring Stephon Diggs in, okay, veteran presence. He's been there, he's done that. He's been to multiple conference championship games. You bring in a veteran wide receiver for your young quarterback. I thought it was a good signing. Stephon Diggs exceeded even what I thought he would do. He had over 1,000 yards receiving this year. Listen, there's some off-the-field stuff. We'll see how that transpires, particularly after the Super Bowl. But by and large, in the locker room, seems like a solid influence on May, on the young guys like Booty, like Pop Douglas, among others. So, listen, again, key X factor in Super Bowl 60. Stephon Diggs, is he going to be able to make plays down the field, be able to move the chains on third down? He's going to be critically important. He is the 8th best player in Super Bowl 60. We are going back to the Seahawks. The 7th best player in Super Bowl 60 is Leonard Williams, interior defensive lineman for the Seahawks. Leonard Williams, who's been one of my favorite players for a long time. He was playing meaningless games with the Jets and with the Giants. Now he's ended up with the Seattle Seahawks now. He's making plays. He is, listen, I think he had 7 sacks in the regular season. Has been one of the key, interior nose tackles in this league. If he can be able to neutralize guys like Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson and force Drake May to kind of have to beat you the entire game with his arm and be able to, again, take that running game away, that's going to be key for the Seattle Seahawks, especially if it's a situation where maybe they're trailing. Maybe, the Patriots have more vets, than the Seahawks do on their team. Like, hey, New England feels like they're in good shape, got some free agents that have been there and done that. Maybe they open up with a 10-0 lead or something of that sort. They're going to need Leonard Williams to make a play to be able to neutralize the run and give the ball back to Sam Darnold and that offense. Leonard Williams is the 7th best player in Super Bowl 60. A guy, I will call it right now, among the two, because I have not made my pick yet for the Super Bowl. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is a guy I'm considering for Super Bowl MVP. Put him up there. Number 6, it is Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver and kick and punt returner for the Seattle Seahawks. He is the 6th best player in Super Bowl 60. I mean, I don't think I need to tell you why, because you've seen it really the entire second half of the year since the Seahawks acquired him. You talk about that game against the Rams. Seattle, who knows? They might not be in the Super Bowl if they don't win that Thursday night game a couple months back against the Rams in Week 16, where Rashid Shaheed makes some plays with a big punt return, making plays through the air on big catches, from Sam Darnold. This is a guy who is a game changer. Returned the opening kick against the 49ers, the divisional round, all the way to the house. Made some plays down the field against the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC Championship game. I have been a fan of this guy for a couple of years now, since he's been with the, back when he was with the Saints. I thought he was a game-changing type of guy. The fact the Seahawks have him now, it was one of the key acquisitions. It's being discussed that way now. We said at the time, great pickup for Seattle. If nothing else, forget the kick returning. Draws at least a little bit of attention away from Jackson Smith-Njigba, who, of course, we'll get to on this list. Rashid Shaheed, game changer, I think has a legitimate chance to be Super Bowl MVP. He is the 6th best player in Super Bowl 60. At number 5, yet another Seahawk. It is the Seahawks quarterback. It is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is the 5th best player in Super Bowl 60, and here's why. I've said it a million times, and I even talked about this on Monday's show. People talking about, oh man, a lot of pressure on Sam Darnold. If he throws 3 interceptions, everyone's going to crush him. Yeah, maybe the next day, but not over the course of the offseason. The question for Sam Darnold last year, after he won 14 games, was, yeah, he's great, He can be great in a good offensive system with Kevin O'Connell with weapons. But do you trust him in the biggest moments? Do you trust him to go win a road game in Week 18 against Detroit? No, he got blown out. Do you trust him to go win a road playoff game against the LA Rams in the wildcard round? No, he got blown out there too. Well, didn't really have to do much against the 49ers, but it was fantastic last week against the Los Angeles Rams. And again, I've showed this graphic a few times now and updated it throughout the season. Sam Darnold, since the start of last season, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in football. 5th in touchdowns, 9th in completion percentage, 7th in pass yards per game, 7th in rating. And he's got the best record of any quarterback in the league since the start of last season. Like, if he wins this Super Bowl, I think it'd be disrespectful to not put him in the top 10. So I'm not saying he's got to be 5 or 6. Can he be at 8, 9, or 10? Is that a fair thing to do? 14 wins back-to-back seasons? See what the Vikings were without him. Didn't look so great. Sam Darnold, 5th best player in Super Bowl 60. Seahawks are going to need him to play big. At number 4, it is Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez, best defensive player on the Patriots by a mile. He is the 4th best player in Super Bowl 60. Here's why. So, the matchup of the game, in my opinion. Christian Gonzalez, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Who wins that one-on-one matchup might decide who wins the Super Bowl on Sunday. Again, this is a guy that can play any type of defense you want. He obviously had the big interception a couple of weeks back against Denver. Were the Broncos going to win? Probably not, but that sealed the deal. That put New England in Super Bowl 60, to have a chance to win another Lombardi Trophy, number 7. This is a guy who has had injury problems throughout his career, but when he is on the field, when he is healthy, the Patriots are a completely different defense on the field, and they're going to need to play big-time football. He's a guy I think, too, could be a Super Bowl MVP type of candidate if he does neutralize JSN. He is the 4th best player, Christian Gonzalez, in Super Bowl 60. At number 3, it is Devin Witherspoon. Again, I love Christian Gonzalez, but I don't even think he's the best DB in this game. Devin Witherspoon is the 3rd best player in Super Bowl 60, and here's why. So, again, this is a guy who is quite simply one of the best shutdown corners in the entire NFL. You've seen it throughout his production this season. He's been a key to the Seahawks shutting down the 49ers in back-to-back games. You saw him be able to make some big plays. What did the Rams do in that NFC Championship game? They kept going anywhere that Devin Witherspoon is not. They're going at Rick Woolen against Puka Nacua. They're going even at times at Eamon Worry. They're going nowhere near Devin Witherspoon, particularly in the second half of that game. He is an absolute game-changing corner. I'm curious to see what Seattle does, what Mike McDonald wants to do in terms of shifting him all over the field. Does he follow Stephon Diggs? Does he play? Does he kind of play one side of the field? Devin Witherspoon is the 3rd best player in Super Bowl 60. At number 2, he might win league MVP tomorrow. We'll see. It is Drake May. Drake May is the 2nd best player in Super Bowl 60, and here's why. So we know what the story and the narrative is, and it's a fair one. He's not been very good in the playoffs. He hasn't. He's got more turnovers than he has touchdowns, but the Patriots are 3-0. The defense has stepped up. I've done a side-by-side comparison. Different era, but Drake May's numbers in his first 3 playoff games, almost identical to Tom Brady's in his first 3 playoff games back in 2001. So, there is an element of, okay, playoff jitters. It is year 2. You are, by the way, facing 3 of the 10 best defenses in the entire NFL with the Chargers, Texans, and Broncos. You've won them all. Made some plays with your legs against the Chargers, made a huge play of the game, arguably, to Keyshawn Boutte in the 4th quarter against the Texans. And again, made some plays with his legs to take advantage of that end of first half turnover against Denver a couple of weeks back. We're kind of waiting on that Drake May moment. Boy, would this be as great of a time as ever to do it in Super Bowl 60 with all the world watching. Drake May is the 2nd best player in the Super Bowl. And at number 1, the best player in Super Bowl 60, it is Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN. Arguably the best wide receiver in football, and I think, without question, the best player in Super Bowl 60. I don't really need to tell you why, because he's almost certainly going to be named Offensive Player of the Year, either him or Christian McCaffrey tomorrow at the NFL Honors. Listen, this is a guy who can run every route in the route tree. He's got amazing hands, got ridiculous speed. He's always, they used to call Julio Jones in high school and college, they used to call him Waffle House. JSN is Waffle House, especially now that he's got Rashid Shaheed with him, and obviously Cooper Kupp. We can't forget about him, the vet presence there. This is a guy who can absolutely break a football game open. Made some huge catches a couple of weeks ago against the LA Rams. If JSN goes off, that's somebody else I think could be in the running for Super Bowl MVP. Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best player in Super Bowl 60. Let's go and look at the list. Top 10 players. Again, it's Patriots fans might be mad at me, and that's fine. I think 7 of the 10 best players in this game are Seahawks. So from 10 to 1, we've got DeMarcus Lawrence, Nick Emenworry, Stephon Diggs, Leonard Williams, Rashid Shaheed, Sam Darnold, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Drake May, And the best player in this game, I believe, is Jackson Smith in Jigba. We'll come back in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. When we do, maybe some more NBA trade news. Who knows? We will react to the trade that was made yesterday between the Grizzlies and the Jazz, with the Utah acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't get this move whatsoever for Utah. Get to that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live before we get out of here. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Wednesday. I just saw the news that Jackson Hayes of the LA Lakers has been suspended for 1 game for shoving the Washington Wizards mascot. The story is funny in and of itself. I'm watching the video. It cuts out. It's clearly from like the arena footage, like to where it goes, like it's on the Jumbotron, and then it shows like the Wizards logo right. Man, it's so good. We're not able to generate on the show immediately. Let's see if I can be able to turn my phone and you can see it, because this is absolutely hilarious. Let's see. Here you go. He like grabs him. Looks like his body's slamming the mascot. Oh man, Lakers, man, oh gosh. The fact they thought last year that this guy could be, the starting big on a team that could contend for a championship. I mean, that's why they went out and got DeAndre Ayton, I guess. What the mascot do, man? You're kind of in his way if you watch the video. It's I don't know. Speaking of bigs, we're talking about bigs that are actually good. Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of those guys. He's a multi-time All-Star, Defensive Player of the Year a few years ago. And we know the Memphis Grizzlies are trying to go into a rebuild. They obviously traded Desmond Bane last summer. They're trying to move on from John Morant. Will they be able to? I have no idea. It feels like the Heat are the most likely destination. I mean, if Ja didn't behave in Memphis, you're telling me he's going to behave in Miami? Okay, we just got to see how that plays out. Jaren Jackson Jr., though, in my mind, has been the best player in the Grizzlies for the last few years. He got traded, and we can show you the terms of the deal. Here you go. So, Jazz get Jaren Jackson Jr., John Conchar, Jock Lindale, and Vince Williams Jr. Grizzlies get a haul. Players that really don't matter a ton. Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang. They got 2 first-round picks from 2027 and a 2031 first-round draft selection. I got to admit, man, and I think Jaren Jackson's an excellent player, can get into foul trouble more often than you'd like, but he's an excellent defensive player and can get his own shot at times offensively. I do not get this trade whatsoever for the Utah Jazz at all. So first of all, Utah's not, they're not going to be a play-in team this year, so they're going to be a lottery team. So they're going to get a good draft pick this year. I get it's 2 first-round picks, 2027, but the guy you add with Keontae George, who's a nice player, by the way, Lauri Markkanen, we'll see if Walker Kessler's back. You think that's going to be good enough to get you to the point to where that one of those picks in 2027 isn't that great of a selection? To where it's like the 16th pick, the 17th pick in the 2027 draft. Memphis got to be like, thank you. Like, listen, Jaren Jackson Jr., we appreciate your services. You're a solid player here for, 7 years, but we're trying to rebuild. We're trying to tear this thing down. We've already traded Desmond Bane. We traded Jaren Jackson Jr. Chances are we'll have to attach a pick with Ja for a team to take on that contract and take on that issue, but we're going into a rebuild as they should. And you mean to tell me, this is why the trade market is so dang confusing sometimes. You mean to tell me that Luka Doncic, I don't know Anthony Davis is in the deal, but come on. You're telling me Luka Doncic is worth 1 first-round pick and Jaren Jackson Jr. is worth 3? I mean, the Warriors if the Warriors somehow make a move for Giannis in the next 23 hours, it's going to be, what, 4 or 5 first-round picks? So Giannis is 2 first-round picks better than Jaren Jackson Jr.? I think there's a little bit bigger of a gap there. And by the way, you've already got, unless you're planning on trading Lauri Markkanen, which we know there were in some trade discussions with the Warriors a couple of offseasons ago. For some reason, Golden State didn't want to trade Brandon Podziemski. Okay. They maybe move Markkanen this offseason. Walker Kessler, we'll see what his future is. He's hurt right now. Do they want to build around Keontae George, Jaren Jackson Jr.? This is not a deal that's worth giving up multiple first-round picks when you're a rebuilding franchise. It's just not. Like, you could say, well, what about Washington with the Wizards making the move for Anthony Davis? Well, they already had Trae Young. They've got a young core of guys that they like. Let's roll the ball out there and see how it works. Because they've been in basketball purgatory forever. Utah, I think prior to the Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trades, I think if you go back to the 90, don't quote me on this, but I think if you went back to the 97 finals, that first finals loss to Chicago, to 2022, they had, I think, one of the best records, if not the best record in basketball. They had always been one of the consistent, almost kind of like the Steelers, never good enough to win a title, post Malone and Stockton, but always good, always in the playoff picture. Well, now they're rebuilding, and now they just gave up 3 assets from that rebuilding process for a guy who's excellent. Hey, he is. He's an all-star caliber player. He's a defensive player of the year. Jaren Jackson Jr. is no scrub. He can play. I just don't see how long-term this makes sense for them at all. And by the way, Jaren Jackson Jr. is somebody who has at times struggled being injury prone. So it's a weird move. I don't get this for Utah in the slightest. And with that is all the time for today's show. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Earlier show than normal. We started at 3 Eastern as opposed to 6 Eastern. We'll be back on Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, our regularly scheduled time at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, and on Instagram. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. I don't even want to say I'm nervous for the trade deadline because you can go back and check the footage. I've never once got my hopes up that the Warriors can make a move for Giannis. And based on the reporting recently, I actually don't think Giannis gets dealt. I really don't. Let's just see how it happens. I cannot guarantee you what my move will be on Friday's show. It might be ecstatic. It might be. The only chance I'll be heartbroken is if Giannis gets dealt and the package is less than what the Warriors would have given up. Then I'll be crushed. Then I'll be devastated. I can't guarantee anything. We'll see what happens. All right. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on Friday. We got Super Bowl prediction shows. We got reaction to Hall of Fame announcements, award announcements, MVP, all that. Subscribe to Carving Up Live. We really appreciate it. We will see you on Friday. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. And peace out. Come on, Dunleavy. We believe in you. Come on. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.